Dear students, welcome to the class. Welcome to the consumer behavior class. This is our third class this semester. As you will remember, we have started our class 3 weeks ago, and we discussed the syllabus and the course content, the grading system. Last week, we started our class with an introduction to consumer behavior, and we reviewed and understood the main concepts of consumer behavior. We discussed the terminology, we learned the terminology, and finally, we also discussed what are the internal and external influencers of consumer behavior. So, and I told you last week that starting from this week, we will be looking at the internal influencers of consumer behavior. So the first internal influencer of consumer behavior that we are going to analyze and learn is the perception. So today we will look what is perception, how it is formed, which factors affect its formation, and how marketing uses some tools and approaches to influence the perception of people. So this is today's topic, and let's go on with the perception subject. So perception is a subjective thing. Every people may have different perceptions about the same object. So first of all, in order to have a perception of something, we need to have a sensation of it, which means that we need to sense it. So the most prerequisite of the perception process is sensation. Sensation should occur in order to perceive something. So in this case, we have to look at what is sensation then. The sensation is actually it's a response of our sensory receptors, like our eyes, ears, our nose, our fingers for physical touch, and our mouth. So the sensation is the response of all these sensory receptors to the stimulus or stimuli. These are the objects that we see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. So this is sensation. We have a stimuli, we have a stimulus, or in plural form, stimuli, which means objects. And when we see them, hear them, smell them, taste them, or touch to them, then sensation occurs. So sensation is a prerequisite of the perception process. Without sensation, we cannot perceive something. First, we need to be aware of it. Being aware of it means sensing these things, stimulus or stimuli, through our sensory receptors. So with perception, we collect these stimuli through our sensation process or sensation response or sensory receptors. Then we organize these stimuli that we receive, and we create a meaning for it. We interpret it. This is called the perception process. So we define the perception process as the process which we get the stimuli, receive the stimuli, select it, and organize it, and finally load a meaning or assign a meaning to the stimuli to mean something for us. So this is the process of perception. So when we collect these sensation inputs, which are stimuli, this can be regarded as the raw data. And we transform this raw data into a meaningful thing for us with the process of perception. So when we think about this process, we easily understood and realized that the process is a subjective process. The result is subjective. It depends on consumers' previous experience, feelings, thoughts, etc. We can look to the same thing and we can perceive different things from that same thing that we are looking. So this is why two person, me and one of you, we may look or hear something and we may understand or perceive a different thing from this sound or visual image. So perception is a subjective interpretation of the stimuli, of the objects. Okay? So in marketing, for example, what is a stimuli? In marketing are advertisements. The advertisement that we see on the magazine or newspaper or on television, the jingle of the brand, the package of the product, the color of the product, the taste of the product, or the physical appearance of the service personnel, the physical atmosphere of the store, the ambience of the store atmosphere or store is all stimuli which we collect through our senses and we interpret and come up with a final meaning about that stimuli or stimulus. Okay? So it is very interesting. As I told you, it's a subjective thing. You know United Colors of Benetton? It's a really nice and activist brand. This is a very old brand, actually. It's a very old and powerful brand even today. Of course, my age group knows very well because in our childhood and younger times, I was preferring United Colors of Benetton for my clothing needs. They are really good. They were really good at that time. I still believe it's still good. So, what is special about United Colors of Benetton? They always address social issues and environmental issues in their advertisements. And while doing this, they are really tough and very activist, very, let's say, marginal in addressing these social and environmental issues. So, as a company, they really have a real nice, sound strategy about addressing these issues. So you see one of these advertisements, and this advertisement proves us how, let's say, how a person or two person may differ in their perceptions when they see something. Look, for example, here you see two hands which are handcuffed, right? So it means that one of them is probably a legal guy, a policeman, and the other maybe is a guilty person, right? So he is arrested. But which one? So our perceptions about people, ethnic sources, they can create some perception mistakes, right? For example, for a person, the police may be a black guy and arrested a white guy, right? But on the other hand, another person may think that in this picture, the police is the white guy and the guilty person is the black guy. It depends on how people see other people. Okay? So this is the perception. It is subjective. As you see in the advertisement, there is no any clue about who is the policeman and who is the guilty person. But perception creates this meaning. When we see it, we put a meaning to it. So we transform it into a meaningful thing for us. And we decide who is the police and who is the guilty person. This is how the perception affects people. and it is a subjective thing. So how this process works? It is very important. The process starts, as I told you, the with the origination of some sensory stimuli. These stimuli are some, let's say, lights or visual things or sounds or smells or the taste of something or when we touch it, its texture, right? So these are the stimuli that they are trying to reach us as consumers. So this stimuli, as I told you, can be different things. For example, advertisement visuals, the sound of the brand's jingle in the radio, or the smell of a brand's product, or the taste of a brand's product, or the smell of a store, right? Or the texture of a product when you touch it, what you feel. So these sensory stimuli, they are trying to connect with us because marketing people try to connect with us through these stimuli that they create, right? And when we receive these stimuli through our sensory receptors, we become exposed to these stimuli. This is the exposure. And if we pay attention to what we are exposed to, then the process of perception starts really. And through our attention, we process this information coming with this stimuli, with this exposure, and we interpret it, we put a meaning to it, and our perception is formed, and this is special to us because it is a subjective one. Now let's start with the stimuli. We should understand what are these sensory stimuli. So first of all, nowadays, product you can see many hundreds, thousands of the same product types, the products with the same functionality. So as consumers in our surrounding, we have thousands of products which serve the same purpose. They have this almost the same functionality. So what makes the difference in terms of creating some sensory experiences? So for products or services, the real sensory experience that people is looking for is not functional benefits, but emotional impact, emotional benefits. So today's consumers are looking more than the functional benefits because more or less all the products serve the same purpose and they have very close standards. They have very close features and almost the same functionality. But what is different, what makes the difference is the sensory experience that the products creates for us. So this is very important. One good example of this sensory experience is can be given with this example actually, the company Method. So Method is a hygiene products producer, and this is let's say they are producing detergents, so hygiene products. So what is special about the Method brand? The special thing about Method brand is how they present their products to the customers. They are trying to create a sensory experience, a nice sensory experience. So how they do it? They do this in two ways. What they do differently from other companies like P&G. What they do differently is two things. First, the package of the product. As you see in the package, the products of Methods seem like some fragments, perfumes, right? So the bottles, the packages, the bottles, like some perfume bottles. So they created a sensory visual experience of using like a fragrance bottles. Moreover, it's not that simple. Moreover, the smell of the products are extremely exotic scents. Exotic scents are used as a smell sensory. So they are creating another sensory experience with nice and unique, special smells which you cannot find in other related products. So they differentiate themselves with some sensory marketing in terms of the bottles of the products, packages of the products, and the ingredient, the content as a smell perfume of the product. So this is what makes the method really different. So it creates a really differentiated sensory experience which leads to the perception of a high quality product with a reasonable price. You see, this is what they are doing. Now, let's go on with let's go on with the sensory marketing then. So, if we talk about the perception and senses and sensation, we need to talk about the sensory marketing as method companies doing. Other companies also apply the same approach of sensory marketing. So sensory marketing involves the influencing or affecting the consumer perceptions through the senses. So this is sensory marketing, affecting consumer behavior or consumer perceptions through our five senses. So how companies use? We saw how Method company is using this. What about the automobile brands, car brands? For example, BMW uses sensory marketing on the smell touch. What they doing actually? Every new BMW car has a special scent which is implemented into the car. When you buy the car for the first time and enter inside the car for the first time, you smell a very nice scent which is special to BMW cars. BMW cars. So why they are doing this? When you are get used to uh, smell this scent in BMW cars for a longer period, you are getting used to with this scent and it creates nice memories. It links to your nice memories in your brain. And then what happens? When you will change your car and buy a new car, of course, this scent goes away after some time. When you are going to buy a new car, you always look for that scent. And when you go to a new BMW, when you smell that scent, it brings to these good memories and it drives you, motivates you to buy another BMW because of these nice scent memories. How Starbucks is doing that. When you enter into a Starbucks store, coffee house, they are targeting you first to smell a very nice coffee scent. Second, to hear a nice music. Third, to experience a nice, comfortable seating places. Fourth, to get a nice, tasty products and drinks. Five, to get a nice service from baristas. So when you analyze what they are trying to do, you will realize that they are addressing to your vision, sight, your taste with products, your smell with nice scent of coffee, and to touch sense with comfortable sitting places, and taste with products and drinks. So you see, Starbucks addresses, targets five senses to create a Starbucks experience to be in the stores. So sensory marketing addresses, directs to five senses: vision, touch, sound, scent, and taste. So in terms of vision, of course, marketing is a visual art and science. This is why we cannot think about marketing without a visual effects. This is why vision, especially colors, play an important role in shaping consumer perceptions. Uh, the previous research shows that there are extremely important, let's say, meanings and associations of colors with some specific tasks or psychological states and emotions. For example, blue represents us the security. This is why it is mostly used in banking industry in financial products because it associates itself with security. What about the black? In some contexts, like sports, black represents the aggressive playing. The research shows that those teams, football teams, who wear black forms, they play more aggressively because it represents the power. This is why black is used. What about also other effects of colors? For example, generally, we use colors on purpose in our package designs because colors also create a link between the package and what is inside in the package. So with the color, you can understand what type of features the products have inside the package. So one good example of this is Castello cheese brand. They made a mistake and they misused a color in one of their products. They were trying to launch a new product, white cheese, in addition to the blue cheese that you see in the left picture. So when they first introduced that right picture, Castello creamy white cheese, the package was not white in color, but the package was red color. So uh, after some time, they launched the product. They realized that their sales is not so good as is intended or targeted. So they didn't understand what is wrong with the sales because the product and product tests were very successful. Consumer were like too much the product. It was a white cheese, but the sales were not supporting the results of the tests. So they made a research and they realized that using the red package on this white cheese created a confusion on the consumer side. Consumers could not understand how the cheese was inside the package because the package was red color like a pepper or something like that. So they couldn't link the package to the inside product. So they changed the package to the white color. So there was a consistent approach, white package and white product inside. And the sales jumped and they got a very good sales numbers because of the package color. This is a very good example how color can affect consumer, let's say, perception. And moreover, some companies really are really, let's say, associated with their colors too much. So people really become aware of these companies and they always realize the brand's name or logo without seeing it and with only seeing the color. For example, a legendary brand, old brand, an ex brand, let's say, Kodak. Uh, this brand is really associated with some tones of red and yellow, like McDonald's. So generally, companies try to let's say register the tones Pantone codes or the tones of the colors to their brand. This is called trade dressing. So trade dressing means defining and fixing the color tones of the brands, and registering these tones to the brand names legally. Then nobody else can use the same tones and the combination of these colors. So Kodak has a trade dress, was a brand which has a trade dress. Marvel Studios also, they have the same. So this is how colors are used. And as you will see, the colors have different associations and marketing applications. For example, yellow color means optimistic and youthful. So people associate the yellow with optimistic, optimistic thinking and youthful, young people. And in terms of marketing, we use yellow to grab the attention of shoppers to the windows. Red is associated with the energy, action. So it is mainly used in sales. Moreover, blue represents trust, security. Banks use mostly blue color. Green becomes associated with wealth, and in stores, green is really a preferred color because it is good for relaxation. Orange, also like red, is an aggressive and action-wise color, and it is always used to drive people to buy something or subscribe to membership. So they are used in the call to action messages. Black represents power, and luxury products are generally use black color and black package. And purple is like relaxation again, soothing, and this is used in beauty products mainly. As you see, many colors have many different associations, and these associations lead to some marketing applications in different fields of marketing. Another one is the scent. Scent is also important. So when we smell something, it may create a link to our memories to really, let's say, remember the good times or good memories, and this may really empower the effect of the other stimuli that we represent for. For example, only saying that it is delicious for a product, for a, let's say, a food product, uh, it may create, let's say, an effect. But if you say that it is delicious and prove it with some scent also, then it is much more effective on consumer side. So, first of all, smell and memory are closely associated. When you smell something, if that smell has something like in BMW case, something good in your memory, links back to something good in your memory, then it creates really a good effect, like in BMW cars case. And also, smell, if it is used in addition to another sense, then it creates a boosting effect on the original sense. Sound is also important. Why? Because sound is also create good feelings. If you hear something which is entertaining, which is interesting, and it catches the attention, if the sound really is an interesting and intensive one. This is why sound is always used as a sense factor in sensory marketing. Moreover, uh, the uh, the the brand names also benefit from the sound of their letters. This is called the sound symbolism. So every letter symbolizes something, and the especially the brand names which are starting with hard consonants in alphabet, like P of Pepsi. So P is a hard consonant as a character. So this type of brand names are more rememberable. So this type of brand names are more easy to remember. This is also an important part of the sound. What about the touch? Touch is very important. Why touch is very important? Because when we touch something, we feel safety. When we touch that, it is real. We understand that we are touching something real. And this sense creates some feeling of security and feeling of having that product in our hand and feeling it is a security issue. This is called the haptic touch sense. So you become sure about what you are buying. Okay, so the negative, the most important challenge of e-commerce and web purchases is the absence of the haptic sense, touch sense. This is very important. And of course, in addition to haptic sense, we have also another effect, endowment effect. What is this endowment effect? When people start to touch something, psychologically, after some time, we feel like we are owning this item. So we start to, let's say, we start to feel that this item is belong to us. This is called the endowment effect. Okay, so when we keep the product in our hand for 30 seconds, for example, then we get used to this product and we think that it's one of our belongings. This is a psychological state and it is called endowment effect. So when you go to the store, salespeople in the store, they are trying to show you the product and give you the product for your trial. If you are in the clothing store, for example, you will buy clothes, touch the clothes, you try to test the cloth. When you test the cloth, you are very close to buy, right? So this is very important. Endowment effect gives us the feeling of having that product in our possession. So it is very important. So touch sense is very critical and effective in consumer behavior. What about the taste? Of course, the smell and taste together create a perfect blend to affect our perceptions. Tasting is a very good, but taste and smell together is more effective. Or taste, smell is good, but tasting together with smell is effective. Of course, we need to really use it. Now, in addition to sensory stimuli, when these stimuli, which is composed of visual things, sounds, smells of the environment, store or products, taste of the products, or the texture of the products, the touch feeling. So when they come to our sensory receptors, in order to go on with the perception, we need to be exposed to these stimuli through our receptors. So what does it mean, exposure in this case? So exposure occurs when these stimuli come within a range, come enough close or intensity level that we can realize them through our sensory receptors. So exposure can only be occurred when our sensory receptors become aware of these stimulus. Okay, so generally, of course, not all stimulus can reach us. We have many stimulus surrounding us. There are sounds, there are advertisements, there are product demonstrations, there are lights, there are newspaper ads, there are billboards. We can see many things, but we are not aware most of them. Why? Because exposure does not occur in many cases. in order to the exposure to occur, they should be above our sensory thresholds. So what are these sensory thresholds? A sensory threshold is the point which is strong above that we can realize that stimulus or stimuli. So we can define the sensory threshold as the point which we start to realize a stimuli through our sensory receptors. So sensory threshold is very important. It is the borderline. It is the borderline of a stimulus to be accepted by our sensory receptors. This is called the sensory threshold. We have different sensory thresholds, types of sensory threshold. The first one is the absolute threshold. What is absolute threshold? Absolute threshold is the minimum of stimulation a person can detect on a given sensory channel. What does it mean as a definition? So if a person cannot see something, he or she cannot be exposed to it because that thing is below the absolute threshold. So absolute threshold is the minimum amount, minimum level of stimulus which we should be exposed to realize it. Okay? This is the case. So, for example, when a customer, a company tries to reach us with some voice, sound, for example. If the level of the sound is low, we cannot hear it. We cannot be exposed to it. So that sound, that stimulus is below our absolute threshold. Moreover, for example, if we are going on with our car on the road and we see a billboard, but we cannot read what is inside in the billboard because the letters are so small. So the letters as the stimuli, they are below our absolute threshold. This is the meaning of absolute threshold. Another type of sensory threshold is the differential threshold. Differential threshold is the ability of our sensory system to detect a change, a difference between the two stimulus. So, what we mean by this? For example, you want to make a discount on your products, right? So you want to apply a discount and you want your customers to be aware of this discount. So if you make a discount from, let's say, $100 to $98, so you are discounting $2. So if this $2 is below the differential threshold of your customers, then they will not be aware of your discount. So the change in the stimulus should be enough strong that it will be above your differential threshold to make you realize that difference, to make your customer realize that difference. So this is called differential threshold. Another example, you want to make an increase in your price, but you don't want to be you don't want your customers to realize this increase in price. What you will do, you have to put a price increase below the differential threshold. So, for example, if we increase your $100 to immediately to $120, what happens? $20 increase in the price, everybody will realize it because it is above the differential threshold. But what about if you apply a lower increase, like from 100 to 105. It is lower increase, and if it is below the differential threshold, then they will not be aware of this increase. So you can make step at a time increase from 105 to 110 to 115, etc. Then everything will be. In the generally brands, they try to revise and renew their logos because of the changing time, preferences, etc. So as you see here, you see the Pepsi's logo here. So what we have in our hand is that this Pepsi logo evolved from previous times to the modern times with many changes. So generally, brands try to make sure that the customers are not alienated from their brands, and they see the brand in the logo as it is. But on the other hand, they try to refine the look of the brand and logo by modernizing it. So as you see in the right frame, Pepsi tried to renew its logo with small patches below the differential thresholds. Why? Because people should not really be alienated from the original logo. But on the other hand, the logo should have a modern look. So they made these changes below the differential threshold to not really create too much difference. You see, there are small touches at a time. Again, in the left side, there are small touches at a time. Yes, so when we get exposed to the things, of course, there is also another important law in action. This is called the Weber's law. If you want your change to be realized by others or not realized by others, you should rely on the principles of Weber. So Weber law says that the stronger the initial stimulus, the greater a change you must do to make a notice, to make it noticeable. So, for example, if you have a product of $100 and you make a $2 discount, and on the other hand, you have a $10 product and you make again $2 discount, what do you think? Which one is more noticeable by the customers? According to the Weber's law, the product with $10 price, when it is discounted $2, it will be more noticeable discount because the base $10 is not so strong compared to $2. But in the $100 product, the base price $100 is very big, strong, and $2 discount is not enough to be noticeable. So it is below of differential threshold. So Weber's law states this difference. So then we have, of course, let's say the attention phase. After the exposure, if we are exposed, which means that the incoming stimuli is above our sensory threshold, above our absolute threshold, so we can really realize, notice this stimulus, and exposure is realized, occurred. Then what happens? In order to the perception to be formed, we need also to pay attention to this incoming stimulus. So once the stimulus is let's say sensation occurs, when the sensation occurs and the stimulus is noticed by our sensory receptors, there is no guarantee that we will pay attention. We just become exposed to it, but we can just be exposed and skip it. It's possible. There is no guarantee that we are going to pay attention. So in addition to this, we also need to pay attention. In order to be perceive something, we need to also pay attention to the incoming stimuli, to the exposed stimuli. So attention refers when our activity focus is devoted to that stimulus. So when we focus on that stimulus, then attention is occurred. So generally, of course, we are receiving thousands messages every day. There are advertisements everywhere, etc. There are many things. So there's really a sensory overload, and we are very selective. So we don't really want to pay attention to everything. So how we pay attention? There are personal selection factors and stimulus selection factors. What about the personal selection factors? The personal selection factors generally are two types. We pay attention to those things that we really need. So if we are aware of our need and we realize that need, then we pay attention to that need. This is called the perceptual vigilance. So we pay attention to the things, to the stimulus which are related with our needs. This is perceptual vigilance. What about the perceptual defense? This is the contrary. If a stimulus is not relevant for us, or we don't need the things that stimulus is related with, then we filter it out and we don't pay attention to that, even it is exposed. Even we are exposed to that. So this is called the perceptual defense. And after some time, even we pay attention to a stimulus, after some time, with repeated exposures to this stimulus, our attention to this stimulus may decrease, and we may not pay attention to the stimulus anymore. This is called the adaptation. Why we stop noticing this stimulus over time, even we pay attention in the first place? Because we are getting used to that stimulus. Nothing different about that stimulus anymore. So, first of all, what are the factors which affect our attention to a stimulus? First of all, it's intensity. High volume sound has a more chance to be paid attention than a low level of sound. Or a very intensive smell has much more chance to be noticed by us, to be paid attention by us, compared to a very low level of intensity of smell. Discrimination is important. How novel, how new, and really shocking, attractive is this stimulus? So if we see a new, different, strange, shocking, or extremely differentiated stimulus, then we pay attention to that. In terms of exposure, if our exposure goes on time, as I told you, adaptation occurs and we stop paying attention, or we pay less attention to that. It becomes ordinary. In order to increase or revitalize the attention, we need to really increase our interest. In order to increase the interest, generally marketers try to change the stimulus that they send. They are making some changes, minimal changes above the differential threshold, so consumers start to realize it, notice it as a new thing, and you revitalize this stimulus. This is this exposure. And finally, the relevance. If the stimulus is relevant to our needs, it is linked to our needs, there's a better chance that it will be paid attention. And of course, as I told you, there are also stimulus characteristics which play important in creating the attention. So the attention performance of the stimulus depends on the factors which belong to the stimulus itself. For example, the size of the stimulus, right? Why? Because if the size of the advertisement is a full page advertisement, it attracts your attention. If you see a mega billboard, you pay attention to that. If you see an extreme lighting in the street, you pay attention to that. If you hear a very loud sound, you pay attention to it and hear it and listen to it. So the size of the stimulus is important in determining the attention. The color, as I told you, different colors, bright colors, depending on the context, the correct color is important. Using correct color is important to grab the attention. The position of the stimulus is important. If you are exposed to a stimulus which is in unusual ways, then you pay attention to that, right? So guerrilla marketing practices shows people, confronts consumers in unexpected places, unusual ways to grab the attention to the brand. So this is positioning. And novelty, of course. If the stimulus is a totally new one, is a shocking one, it's a very attractive one, and it's again a new one, then it grabs attention. But again, in order to not be in the adaptation failure or in the adaptation, in order to not adaptation be occur on consumer side, we need to keep renovating, or let's say renewing the stimulus, so it will always revitalize its effect on attention. And finally, if we pay attention, then we start to interpret this stimulus and try to understand the meaning for us, or we create the meaning for us. So interpretation, with interpretation, when we really create the meaning, it becomes special to us because this perception is subjective. It is based on our previous experience with the brand, or if we don't know the brand, it is based on our previous beliefs, culture, or our previous experiences in the life. So the mixture of our previous experience with the brand, our beliefs, attitudes, cultural norms, social norms, etc., they create our perception about what we see and we pay attention. And of course, these are subjective for each customer. For example, there are many tests about this. For example, Coca-Cola and Pepsi test. In one test, consumers are blindfolded, so they cannot see the brands of the bottles, and they drink Pepsi and Cola. And many of the consumers who tested the case, they liked Pepsi and preferred Pepsi without knowing the brand name. Afterwards, the brand names are opened and they can see the brand names and bottles, and they drink again, and this time they prefer Coca-Cola. It was the same drink. So what is the difference? The difference is the perception. Coca-Cola is perceived as a better taste and better brand than Pepsi. But when they don't see the brands, they like the taste of Pepsi. So this is how perception works. In another example, when you show two buckets of French fries, potato chips, potatoes, French potatoes, when people don't see McDonald's logo in one, and the other is the one with McDonald's logo, but the potatoes are the same. All of them are McDonald's products. So those potatoes which are in the McDonald's bucket, they are liked much more. They say that it is more tastier, but in reality they are the same. So McDonald's brand visually creates a perception of high quality, high taste, better taste. But the white package, there is no brand, there is no perception about that. So they think that that one, the plain bucket, is only an empty, is only a standard potato. So this is how perception works. So today we looked at the perception and what is it, how it is formed, and how marketing uses some tools and senses to alter, change our perception. So, dear students, do you have any questions? Thank you, Talha. Thank you, Hüseyin. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Görkem. Thank you, Görkem. Mubarak, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, dear students. Thank you.